Hey, I'm Nora from tastypc.tv, and today I'm doing an overview of both the Alphacool NVXP Waterblock and Backplate for the NVIDIA GTX 670. Now in this video I'm actually going to fit both the waterblock and backplate to the card on camera, although I've actually never watercooled a graphics card before, so this video is by no means like a fitting guide or an installation guide or anything like that. But I have actually had a sneaky peek at the instructions already, and they're not very helpful, so this will be interesting. But firstly, I'm going to take you for a look around both the waterblock and backplate, go through what comes in the box, etc. So let's get started. Starting with the Alphacool Nexus NVXP NVIDIA GTX 670 Waterblock, you get a tube of foul paste, 2 blanking plates, some Allen head screws and washers, and also an Allen key. Now if you are also going to be using the backplate, you won't be using these screws. You also get some foul pads for the memory and VRM modules, and 2 mounting guides, this one being slightly more helpful despite the fact that it does think that English is French and French is English. So then looking at the water block itself, the front of it is made of stainless steel and it's got this really nice brushed black finish. Now I do really like how it looks, but when you're handling something like this you really should wear gloves, because if you touch it, it will take you quite some time to get it looking kind of clean and new again. But it is also available in polished black, silver or copper, and it's got the Alphacool logo printed really nicely on it. So then the actual block itself is made of full copper for maximum possible heat transfer, and it's got these raised areas for places where the block needs to touch the card. The NVXP block does use G1/4 inch threads, and as it has 4 connectors, it means it does support SLI. Now it is heavier than you'd expect, but apparently it is still lighter than the majority of blocks on the market. And then moving on to the Alphacool Nexus NVXP NVIDIA GTX 670 GPU backplate, you get another fitting kit, this time with slightly longer screws as they've got to pass through both the backplate and card into the water block, some more thermal pads, and another relatively useless mounting guide. And then finally you get the backplate itself. Now the backplate is anodised black aluminium with a matching Alphacool printed logo. Even though it isn't actually required for the water block to work, it does help support the card under its strain, preventing it from twisting and bending. And it also gives additional cooling performance. So then moving on to the fitting process, I'm going to be using a Palette NVIDIA GTX 670 for this. Now the first thing I did was remove the air cooler just by undoing the screws and unplugging the fan header. I then removed the old foul paste off the GPU just by using some kitchen roll and Tim cleaner. The next step is to remove the heatsink. It's actually really fiddly to do. You get some pliers and like pinch the top of the screw thing while simultaneously trying to pull it out the other side, so it's quite difficult to do. And then after that you want to apply the foul pads. So you just remove the little plastic covers from both sides and place them over the memory modules. You want to make sure they're covered properly. Apparently it doesn't actually matter which way up you have the foul pads. And then after that you want to put foul pads in the area where the heatsink was previously covering. Now according to the leaflet, if you've got 2 rows of VRMs here, you want to use this foul pad and put it here like this. But as I don't have a second row, I don't need it. But unfortunately, even though it's spare, I can't use this foul pad to cover the first row of VRMs because it's actually thicker than the rest of the foul pads. So then you've got this big square foul pad that you want to cut to size, although you'd be aware that it might cover one of the screw holes, so you might just want to cut a bit off the edge for that up there. So the next thing after that was me to apply foul paste for the GPU, and I don't normally use a spreader, I do normally just do the blob technique, but I thought I'd best spread it out even though I'm not the greatest with one. And then after that it's time to fit the water block. Now you do want to be really careful and obviously make sure it's all properly lined up before you put it on. And then when it's on, flip it over, once again being really careful, and then just sit it somewhere where you're comfortable with it. So this is the point, if you were only using the water block you would secure it into place with the washers and screws, but obviously as I'm also fitting the backplate I'm not going to do that. So the next step is to get the foul pads that come with the backplate and put them on the back of the memory and VRM modules, so that this side of the card is symmetrical to the other side of the card, and once again you've got to cut the big square one down to size. Once you've done that, you want to put the backplate on, making sure the holes on the backplate line up with the holes on the card. And then once that's on, just secure it into place with the washers and screws, and that's it. You should have a fully working water-cooled graphics card. I have now fit the cards into a rig, and I have to say I do really love the look of this backplate. I think that if you are getting this water block you should definitely consider getting the backplate too. Although I'd probably look to swap up the colour of the washers, maybe say if I was going for like a red or a blue themed rig, to get red or blue washers just to kind of tie the card in with the rest of the system. But the face of the card is really shiny and really reflective, and I could only get my camera to show a reflection of my motherboard, but it still looks really sexy. And then looking at the side profile of the card, which is probably the most important angle, the thick full copper block really does stand out, which I suppose is both a good and a bad thing depending on which colour scheme you're going with, but you do probably want to plan in advance and make sure that it ties in with the rest of your system. Although unfortunately I do have to point out this kit doesn't actually come with anything to secure the card to the PCI bracket. Now some kits do come with a screw and a nut to secure this, and it's definitely something that I would want to see, so I'm actually going to have to source this myself, as I definitely wouldn't recommend leaving your card like this, especially now that it is a lot heavier. So that was my attempt at water cooling a graphics card, but I've got to say I really like the Waterblock and Backplate, and I'm really looking forward to getting these cards in an actual fully finished rig to see what sort of temps they run at and also how I can overclock them. But that was my overview of the Alphacool NVXP Waterblock and Backplate for the NVIDIA GTX 670. If you like this video, hit the like button, don't forget to subscribe, and thanks for watching.